Picture this, it's one of those December evenings where the world outside your window feels like it's wrapped in tinsel and fairy lights, but inside, everything's just ordinary. I'm talking about the kind of holiday season that sneaks up on you like an uninvited guest, rushed shopping lists, half-hearted decorations dangling from the mantel, and that nagging sense that the magic everyone's chasing is slipping right through your fingers. I remember it clear as day, last year, when I was knee-deep in the chaos of it all. The tree was up, sure, but it looked more like a lopsided pinecone than a winter wonderland. Presents? Piled under the branches, but wrapped in that frantic, last-minute way that screams obligation more than joy. And me? I was sitting there on the couch, staring at the glow of the TV flickering with some sappy holiday special, feeling that familiar hollow ache settle in my chest. You know the one I mean, the quiet doubt that whispers, is this it? All the hustle, the forced cheer, and for what? Holidays are supposed to be about warmth, connection, right? Family gatherings that knit souls together, laughter echoing through the house like bells on a sleigh. But lately, for so many of us, they've morphed into something else, a checklist of superficial rituals, Instagram-perfect moments that leave you scrolling for real meaning. I was right there in the thick of it, sipping lukewarm cocoa, wondering if the spark of wonder I'd felt as a kid was gone for good, buried under layers of adult cynicism and the grind of everyday life. Bills to pay, deadlines looming even in the so-called season of peace, and that creeping isolation that hits hardest when the world's pretending to be one big, happy family. That's when it happened. Not with a bang or a flash of light, no, nothing so dramatic as the movies would have you believe. It was subtler, almost absurd, like the universe decided to play a gentle prank on my jaded heart. I heard it first, a soft rustle from the corner of the living room, the kind you dismiss as the house settling or the wind rattling the blinds. But then, there it was again, faint, playful, like tiny footsteps pattering across the hardwood floor. I sat up, heart skipping a beat, and peered into the shadows beyond the tree's glow. And emerging from the dimness, no taller than my knee, was an elf. A Christmas elf, straight out of some forgotten folklore, with a hat that flopped jauntily to one side, bells jingling softly on the toes of his curly-toed shoes. His eyes sparkled with mischief, wide and knowing, like he'd been watching me all along, waiting for the exact moment my guard was down. Now, hold on, before you think I've lost it or spiked my eggnog with something extra festive, let me assure you, this wasn't some hallucination born of holiday stress. This little guy was as real as the chill seeping through the windowpane, his green tunic embroidered with golden threads that caught the light just so, and a satchel slung over his shoulder bulging with who knows what wonders. He didn't speak at first, he just tilted his head, grinned that impish grin, and scampered up onto the arm of the couch beside me. I froze, half expecting him to vanish like morning mist, but he didn't. Instead, he reached into his satchel and pulled out a tiny, glowing ornament, no bigger than a walnut, that pulsed with an inner light, warm and inviting. He held it out, as if offering a secret, and in that instant, the room felt different. The air hummed with possibility, the ordinary transformed into something extraordinary. It was the start of what I'd come to call my own holiday miracle, the kind that doesn't come wrapped in shiny paper but unfolds in the quiet spaces we usually ignore. This elf, let's call him Finn, for the way he finned through the edges of my reality like a fish through water, was no ordinary visitor. He wasn't here to grant wishes or sprinkle pixie dust. No, he was something more profound, a whimsical guide crashing into my routine to shake loose the dust from my soul. And as I sat there, mesmerized, I couldn't help but wonder, in this world of superficial festivities, where tinsel hides the cracks and carols mask the loneliness, could a small, playful figure like this really reveal deeper truths? Truths about joy that isn't bought or borrowed, but rediscovered? About connections that go beyond the surface, piercing right to the heart of what it means to be alive, especially when the nights grow long and the heart feels heavier than the snow outside. Think about it, how often do we barrel through the holidays on autopilot, chasing that elusive high of perfection? We deck the halls, bake the cookies, send the cards, but deep down, there's this undercurrent of doubt, isn't there? A voice asking if the magic is real or just a pretty illusion we cling to because letting go feels too empty. I've been there, my friend, staring at the calendar, counting down to New Year's with a mix of relief and regret, convinced that the wonder I once believed in as a wide-eyed kid had evaporated like breath on a frosty window. But Finn's arrival? It was like a crack in the ice, a reminder that miracles don't announce themselves with fanfare. They tiptoe in, disguised as the unexpected, daring you to look closer. As he perched there, swinging his tiny legs and humming a tune I swear I've heard in childhood dreams, I felt the first stirrings of curiosity bubbling up. What was he doing here, in my cluttered living room, amid the half-read novels and forgotten mugs? Was he a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of holiday longing? Or something more, a messenger from that forgotten place where belief and wonder coexist? He didn't explain, not yet, he just winked, as if to say, stick around, and you'll see. And in that wink, the dilemma took root. Could I, a grown-up skeptic with a life full of routines and regrets, open myself to the possibility that magic hides in plain sight? That joy and connection aren't lost, but waiting to be unearthed from the everyday chaos we call life? That night, as the clock ticked toward midnight and the world outside hushed under a blanket of snow, I found myself leaning in, drawn into this bizarre encounter like a moth to a gentle flame. Finn began to fiddle with the ornaments on the tree, rearranging them with nimble fingers, each placement seeming to breathe new life into the branches. One by one, the lights seemed brighter, the colors deeper, as if his touch coaxed hidden stories from the pine needles. I watched, transfixed, my mind racing with questions I hadn't dared voice in years. Why now? Why me? And more importantly, what if this wasn't just a quirk of fate, but an invitation to rediscover the holidays, not as a performance, but as a heartfelt journey? It hit me then, in the soft glow of that pulsing ornament still clutched in his hand, that this elf's arrival was no accident. The holidays, for all their gloss and glamour, often amplify our deepest yearnings, for belonging, for that spark of unfiltered delight, for proof that we're not alone in the quiet moments. We traded the raw wonder of childhood for the measured pace of adulthood, building walls around our vulnerabilities under the guise of strength. But here was Finn, small and unassuming, disrupting that carefully constructed normalcy. He hopped down from the couch, tugging at my sleeve with surprising insistence, his eyes alight with adventure. Come on, he seemed to say without words, let's see what miracles look like when you stop looking for them in all the wrong places. And just like that, my ordinary evening cracked open, revealing glimpses of something profound. The dilemma sharpened, in a season drowning in superficiality, could this whimsical intruder, part myth, part mystery, unlock the deeper truths about joy that we'd all but forgotten? Joy that blooms from genuine connection, not obligation. Connection that bridges the gaps we pretend aren't there. As he led me toward the window, pointing out the first flurries dancing in the lamplight, I felt the pull of curiosity, the invitation to reflect on my own overlooked wonders. Have you ever paused amid the holiday frenzy to notice the small magics, the way laughter lingers in the air, or a stranger's smile cuts through the cold? I hadn't, not in ages. But with Finn by my side, everything shifted. The routine I'd clung to like a lifeline began to feel like a cage, and beyond it, a world of possibility beckoned. Over the next few hours, though time blurred in his presence, I started to see my home, my holidays, through fresh eyes. The cluttered kitchen, once a symbol of my disarray, became a canvas for shared secrets as he unearthed forgotten recipes from dusty cookbooks, his laughter tinkling like chimes. The backyard, blanketed in snow, transformed from a barren expanse to a playground of potential, where footprints could lead to hidden treasures. Each moment built on the last, layering questions upon questions. What if the real miracles aren't delivered by sleigh, but sparked by our willingness to embrace the whimsical? What if this elf, this tiny disruptor, was the key to peeling back the layers of cynicism and rediscovering the heart of the season? As the night deepened, Finn's energy was infectious, pulling me from my reverie into tentative steps of engagement. We didn't speak much at first, words felt inadequate against his silent eloquence, but in his gestures, I sensed a narrative unfolding, one that promised to challenge everything I thought I knew about joy and connection. The superficial festivities outside? They paled in comparison to the intimate revelations stirring within. And as dawn's first light crept in, painting the room in hues of pink and gold, I realized this was only the beginning. The elf had arrived not to fix my holidays, but to awaken me to their true essence, a canvas for personal miracles, waiting for someone brave enough to paint them. So here I am, sharing this with you, because if a single elf can upend a skeptic's world, imagine what small wonders await in yours. But before we dive deeper into this tale, into the adventures, the doubts, and the transformations that followed, let me leave you with this simple call. Tonight, as the holidays unfold around you, pause. Look for your own unexpected visitor, that whisper of magic in the mundane. Jot down one overlooked joy, one fleeting connection, and hold it close. Because miracles, my friend? They start with an open heart. And trust me, once you let one in, everything changes. Dear viewer, make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. Sometimes subscriptions can be automatically cancelled, so it's always good to double-check. While you're at it, consider becoming a channel member. As a member, you'll enjoy amazing perks like watching our content ad-free. You can also support our work by sending a thanks. Your contribution helps us invest in better tools and improve the quality of our productions. Join us on this journey and become part of our community. Oh, and let us know in the comments which city you're listening from and what time it is there right now. That first night with Finn blurred the lines between what I thought was real and what I dared to hope might be. There I was, still perched on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding like a drum in some forgotten holiday parade, as this pint-sized intruder settled in like he owned the place. He'd scampered back down to the floor now, his bell-tipped shoes tinkling softly against the rug, and was busy eyeing the lopsided tree with a critical squint, as if critiquing a masterpiece gone awry. Me? I just stared, mouth half open, my mind scrambling to catch up. Was this stress-induced delirium? Too many late nights and too little sleep, conjuring up fairy tales from the recesses of my overworked brain? Or, and here's where the real knot twisted in my gut, was this the universe's way of throwing me a lifeline, one wrapped in whimsy and mischief? Let me paint the scene a bit clearer, because looking back, it's those details that make the whole thing feel less like a dream and more like a deliberate nudge from fate. The apartment was your typical holiday war zone, string lights tangled in a heap on the coffee table, a half-eaten plate of gingerbread cookies growing stale, and the faint scent of pine mixing with the musty smell of unpacked boxes from last year's storage. I'd been grinding through the season like everyone else, emails piling up at work, family texts buzzing about who was bringing what to dinner, and that underlying hum of exhaustion that turns even the coziest nights into endurance tests. Holidays, am I right? They're supposed to recharge us, but half the time, they drain the battery instead, leaving you questioning if the joy is worth the juggle. I was mid-sip of that cooling cocoa, scrolling through my phone for yet another playlist of festive tunes to drown out the silence, when Finn made his move. It wasn't dramatic, no poof of smoke or dramatic entrance like in those old films. Nah, he just appeared. 1 second, the corner shadow was empty, the next, there he was, peeking out like a kid from behind the curtain. His arrival hit during one of those peak stress moments, you know the kind. I'd just hung up from a call with my sister, the one where she casually dropped that everyone was expecting me to host this year, just like old times, ignoring the fact that my life felt more like a solo act than a family symphony. Cynicism had me in its grip, another holiday ticking by, another round of forced smiles and small talk that never quite reached the soul. Magic? I'd written that off years ago, filed it under childhood illusions, right next to Santa and endless summers. But Finn? He didn't care about my skepticism. With a grin that stretched ear to pointed ear, he darted forward, grabbing a stray strand of tinsel from the floor and twirling it like a lasso, his laughter a high-pitched chime that cut through the quiet like a ray of unexpected sunlight. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, half convinced this was the prelude to a breakdown. Okay, I muttered to myself, or maybe to him, I couldn't tell anymore. What's your game here, little guy? You from the North Pole's lost and found? But Finn just chuckled, a sound like wind chimes in a breeze, and leaped onto the armrest again, closer this time. Up close, he was even more disarming, skin like polished porcelain, freckles dusted across his nose like cinnamon on toast, and those eyes, deep green pools that seemed to hold entire forests of secrets. He didn't answer with words, not yet. Instead, he mimed pulling something from his satchel, a tiny hammer and a loop of wire, and before I knew it, he was clambering up the tree branches, fixing the wonky star at the top with deft, sure movements. Twink. Twink. The lights flickered back to life, casting dancing shadows that made the room feel alive, pulsing, as if the whole space was waking up from a long nap. That simple act, it hit me like a gentle slap. Here I was, buried under the weight of holiday shoulds, doubting every bit of sparkle, and this elf was treating the ordinary like it was brimming with potential. My skepticism reared up, fierce as ever. Elves? Real elves? Come on, that's the stuff of bedtime stories, not a Tuesday night in a one-bedroom apartment. Yet, as he worked, humming that same elusive tune, I felt the first crack in my armor. What if I was wrong? What if, in all the chaos of wrapping paper and rushed errands, we'd overlooked the real magic, the kind that doesn't need reindeer or workshops, but thrives in the messy, human moments we rush past? Finn paused midway up the tree, turning to me with a playful tilt of his head, as if challenging me to join in. I hesitated, fingers gripping the mug like a shield, but something in his gaze pulled me forward. Tentatively, I stood, reaching out to steady a sagging branch, and for the first time that season, my hands weren't shaking from stress, they were steady, curious. As we tinkered together, him directing with exaggerated gestures, me fumbling like a novice magician, the room transformed. The tree, that sad pinecone I'd cursed earlier, straightened under our combined efforts, its needles seeming to perk up, catching the light in ways that made my breath catch. Finn's antics were pure play. He'd dangle from a low branch like a trapeze artist, or hide behind an ornament only to pop out with a silly face that had me chuckling despite myself. It was absurd, delightful, and utterly disarming. My mind raced ahead, piecing together the existential puzzle he'd dropped in my lap. Belief in magic amid all this cynicism, how do you even start? Life had beaten the whimsy out of me over the years, lost jobs, faded dreams, relationships that fizzled like fireworks too soon to light the sky. Holidays amplified it all, turning celebration into a mirror that reflected back our emptiest parts. But Finn? He was living proof that maybe, just maybe, wonder wasn't extinct, it was hiding, waiting for someone to flip the switch. We worked in tandem for what felt like hours, though the clock barely budged. He'd point to a tangled light string, and I'd untangle it, our silent collaboration building a rhythm that eased the knot in my chest. Each fixed bulb was a small victory, a whisper against the doubt. See? Even in the everyday chaos, bills stacking up, to-do lists mocking you, there's room for this. For sparks that ignite without permission. I caught myself smiling, a real one, not the polite mask I wore at office parties. The dilemma sharpened with every shared glance. Could I let go of the cynicism that had become my comfort blanket? Admit that miracles might not be grand gestures from the heavens, but these quiet disruptions, these playful nudges from the unexpected? Finn seemed to sense my inner tug-of-war. Midway through stringing Garland, he paused, hopped down, and placed a tiny, cool hand on my wrist. No words, just that touch, light as a snowflake, warm as a hearth fire, and in it, I felt the question echo, what if the real elves aren't lurking in workshops or storybooks, but right here, in the sparks of wonder we ignore every day? That thought lingered as we stepped back to admire our handiwork. The tree stood tall now, a beacon in the dim room, its glow chasing away the shadows that had clung to the corners. But Finn wasn't done, oh no, his eyes twinkled with more mischief, scanning the room like a general plotting the next campaign. He scampered toward the kitchen, beckoning me with a wave, and I followed, drawn by the pull of this newfound energy. The stress of the evening, that call, the lists, the loneliness, faded to a dull hum, replaced by a subtle shift inside me. Skepticism? Still there, lurking like an old habit, but cracked open just enough to let curiosity flood in. What other chaos in my life hid these miracles? The unanswered emails, the quiet dinners alone, could they hold their own brand of magic, if only I looked closer? As we entered the kitchen, Finn appended his satchel onto the counter, spilling forth a cascade of oddities, shimmering spices that smelled of pine and spice cake dreams, a miniature rolling pin etched with runes, and berries that glowed faintly like captured fireflies. He set to work, mixing and stirring with exaggerated flair, turning my bland countertop into a stage for culinary alchemy. I watched, half laughing, half mesmerized, as the aroma filled the air, rich, inviting, chasing away the stale takeout vibes that had defined my nights. You're turning my kitchen into Santa's workshop, I said aloud, testing the waters, and to my surprise, he nodded vigorously, mimicking a chef's kiss that had me bursting into genuine laughter. It was the first real laugh I'd mustered in weeks, raw and unfiltered, bubbling up from a place I'd long ago sealed shut. But even in the fun, the dilemma gnawed. How long could I suspend disbelief? Adulthood had trained me to question everything, to weigh pros and cons until wonder wilted. Yet Finn's playful energy chipped away at that, one antic at a time. He balanced a spoon on his nose, juggled berries until they formed a tiny pyramid, all while urging me to join. Hand me a whisk here, a dash of something ethereal there. Our creation? Not just cookies, but bites of something deeper, flavors that evoked memories I'd buried, Grandma's kitchen on snowy eves, the taste of home before life got complicated. As we baked, the oven's warmth mirrored the thaw in my heart, subtle but undeniable. The transformation crept in unannounced, from rigid skeptic to someone willing to play, to question if miracles weren't hiding in the everyday grind, waiting for a nudge like this elf to reveal them. By the time the treats cooled, the night had deepened, stars pricking the sky outside like scattered diamonds. Finn and I sat at the table, him perched on a salt shaker like a throne, me munching on a cookie that tasted like pure nostalgia. The existential weight settled heavier now, in this cynical world, where holidays often feel like scripted performances rather than heartfelt pauses. Could I embrace the magic within? Believe that joy lurks not in perfection, but in these chaotic, elf-led interruptions? His eyes met mine across the crumbs, sparkling with unspoken promise, and I felt the hook sink deeper. What fresh adventure was he plotting next, and how far would it pull me from the safety of my doubts? Little did I know, Finn had only just begun unraveling the threads of my guarded heart, leading us toward whispers of joy I'd long forgotten. But that's a story for the moments that followed, when the elf's whimsy started digging up roots from my past. As the aroma of those fresh-baked cookies lingered in the air like a warm hug from an old friend, Finn's eyes lit up with that irrepressible spark, the kind that says, "Hold on to your hat, we're just getting started." He hopped down from his makeshift perch, dusting crumbs from his tunic with a flourish, and before I could even catch my breath, he was tugging at my pant leg again, insistent as a kid dragging you to the best part of a playground. The kitchen, still humming with the oven's residual heat, felt like a portal now, less a room for quick meals and more a launchpad for whatever came next. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, chuckling to myself despite the lingering whisper of doubt. "All right, Finn," I said, half whispering as if the walls might overhear, "What's the next trick up your curly sleeve?" He didn't disappoint. With a gleeful hop, he scampered toward the living room, pausing only to snatch a couple of those glowing berries from the counter, remnants of his magical mix that pulsed faintly in his palm like tiny heartbeats. I followed, my socks sliding a bit on the floorboards, that tentative delight bubbling up inside me like fizzy champagne. The tree we'd fixed together stood sentinel in the corner, its lights now a soft, steady glow rather than the erratic flickers of before, casting elongated shadows that danced like playful ghosts. Finn darted to the base of it, rooting around in the piles of unpacked decorations I'd shoved there weeks ago, boxes of tattered garlands, faded stockings, and ornaments that hadn't seen the light of day since my own childhood Christmases, back when the world felt boundless and every snowflake was a promise of adventure. He pulled out an old, dog-eared book from the depths of one box, the kind with a cracked spine and illustrations that popped off the page like they were itching to leap into real life. It was my childhood copy of The Night Before Christmas, the one Mom used to read by the fireside, her voice weaving magic into the ordinary. How it had survived the moves, the purges, the years of benign neglect, I had no idea. Finn cradled it like a treasure, flipping to a page with a dramatic flair that made me snort with laughter. There, in bold, whimsical lines, was the elf's domain, workshops buzzing with toymakers, reindeer prancing in the snow, and that eternal figure of jolly old Saint Nick. But Finn? He shook his head, a mischievous glint in his eye, as if to say, "Nah, that's not the whole story, not by a long shot." What followed was something straight out of those pages, but twisted through the lens of my jaded present. Finn beckoned me down to the floor, cross-legged beside the tree, and began what I can only describe as an elf adventure, a ritual of rediscovery that pulled me kicking and giggling back to the kid I used to be. He started simple, handing me a spool of ribbon from the box, then demonstrating with exaggerated mime how to weave it into the branches, not just for show, but to tell a story, as he pantomimed with wild gestures. I'd tie a loop here, representing a forgotten laugh, another there, for a dream deferred. It sounded silly, even in my head, but as my fingers worked the silk, soft and cool against my skin, memories flooded in unbidden, like long-lost letters washing up on the shore. There was the winter I was 8, building a snow fort in the backyard with my brother, our breaths puffing out in dragon clouds as we plotted elf defenses against imaginary invaders. We didn't have fancy tools, just mittens caked in ice and imaginations running wild. Or the Christmas Eve when Dad surprised us with a homemade sleigh from scrap wood, pulling us around the block while carols blared from a boombox. Those moments? Pure, unadulterated joy, the kind that didn't need validation or likes on social media. But adulthood, oh, it creeps in like frost on a windowpane, doesn't it? Burdens pile up, the mortgage that never shrinks, the job that demands your weekends, the family dynamics that turn gatherings into tightropes. I'd traded that wide-eyed wonder for checklists and coping mechanisms, convincing myself that innocence was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Holidays became hollow echoes, cookie swaps out of obligation, lights strung to keep up appearances, while the real play, the genuine delight, got buried under layers of real life. Finn sensed it, I swear. As I faltered with a particularly stubborn knot in the ribbon, my mind drifting to a recent argument with a friend over something trivial, he paused his own weaving and placed a berry in my palm. It warmed instantly, pulsing with that ethereal light, and when I looked inside, wait, no, it wasn't literal, but in that moment, it was as if the glow carried visions. Flashes of me as a kid, twirling in the living room to Mom's record player, the tree a backdrop to our impromptu dances. Laughter that rang true, not forced. Connections that felt effortless, like breathing. But then the adult overlay, the same room now cluttered with bills and regrets, the music replaced by the hum of a microwave. The dilemma hit hard, right there on the rug. How do you reclaim that lost innocence when the weight of grown-up worries presses down like an anchor? Do you fight for it, risk looking foolish, or let it slip away as just how things are? He wouldn't let me wallow, though. With a determined wag of his finger, Finn leaped up, grabbing an old string of paper snowflakes I'd made in grade school, yellowed but intact, each one a wonky star of childhood creativity. He strung them across the room, from the tree to the window, transforming the space into a canopy of memories. Then, turning to me, he struck a pose, arms wide, feet tapping out a rhythm on the floor. Dance? Here? Now? I hesitated, glancing at the clock, midnight long past, the world outside still and sleeping, but his expectant grin chipped away at my reservations. What the heck, I muttered, standing up with a creak in my knees that belied my age. We started slow, him twirling like a top, me shuffling side to side, awkward at first, like a rusty marionette. But as the tree lights flickered in time with our steps, something shifted. The isolation I'd carried all season, the empty evenings, the unanswered invitations, began to melt, replaced by this tentative delight, light as the snowflakes swaying above us. It was absurd, you know? A grown man dancing with an elf in a living room that smelled of pine and fresh dough. But in that absurdity lay the magic. Finn led me through the ritual, pulling more relics from the boxes, a battered dreidel from a Hanukkah long ago, a pinecone angel I'd crafted with glue and glitter, each one unlocking another suppressed memory. We spun the dreidel, betting imaginary wonders on where it landed, play money for the soul. When it toppled to none, meaning nothing, Finn feigned dramatics, flopping onto the rug with a theatrical sigh that had me doubled over in laughter. My own chuckles joined in, deep and freeing, echoing off the walls like they hadn't in years. Isolation? It felt miles away now, chased off by this shared whimsy. But the dilemma lingered in the pauses, between spins and steps, in the rush of life, the commutes, the compromises, the endless scroll of to-dos. Had we traded genuine play for these hollow traditions? Stringing lights on autopilot, exchanging gifts that gather dust, all while the child inside starves for a taste of real, unscripted joy? As our adventure unfolded, Finn's guidance grew more intimate. He led me to the window, where the snow had picked up, fat flakes swirling like confetti in a dream. Pressing his nose to the glass, smudging it with a tiny print, he traced shapes in the frost, a reindeer here, a starburst there. I joined in, our fingers leaving trails that intertwined, and suddenly, we were back in my childhood yard, drawing worlds on frozen panes while waiting for the school bus. Remember this? I whispered, though he couldn't speak, didn't need to. The transformation was subtle at first, a softening around my eyes, a looseness in my shoulders. From isolated skeptic to someone tentatively opening the door to delight, one frosty doodle at a time. We turned it into a game then, elf versus human, racing to create the silliest scene. His was a wonky elf army marching on candy canes, mine, a flock of snowbirds delivering packages to the moon. Laughter came easier, laced with that sweet ache of nostalgia, the kind that reminds you what you've lost but hints at how to find it again. Yet, even in the fun, the adult burdens tugged, memories of holidays past soured by loss, the empty chair at the table after Dad's passing, the distance that grew between siblings like weeds in a neglected garden. Finn seemed to know, pausing our frolic to hand me a small, woven crown from his satchel, twisted vines and berries that smelled of evergreen hope. He placed it on my head, bowing with mock solemnity, crowning me king of forgotten joys. It was playful, yes, but poignant too, a nudge toward reclaiming what time had stolen. I adjusted it, feeling ridiculous and redeemed all at once. The dilemma sharpened. Could I balance the innocence I craved with the responsibilities that defined me? Or would embracing one mean forsaking the other, leaving me forever caught in this tug-of-war? We kept at it through the wee hours, the elf adventure weaving through the night like a thread of silver. Finn unearthed a dusty box of family photos next, faded Polaroids of me as a gap-toothed kid, buried in wrapping paper, eyes wide with wonder. We pored over them by the tree's light, him pointing and mimicking the expressions with uncanny accuracy. That one, me sledding down the hill, wind-whipped and wild? He acted it out, tumbling across the rug in a blur of limbs. The isolation cracked further, replaced by this bridge to my past, tentative delight blooming into something warmer, more solid. Burdens? They didn't vanish, but they lightened, shared in the glow of rediscovery. In the rush of life, where traditions often feel like chains rather than charms, had we indeed swapped play for pretense, carols sung by rote, gatherings survived rather than savored? As dawn hinted at the horizon, painting the snow in pale blues, Finn finally slowed, his energy ebbing into a contented hum. We'd transformed the room, ribbon storytelling through the branches, snowflakes arching overhead, photo memories pinned like badges of battles won. I sat back, crown askew, heart fuller than it had been in ages. The elf perched beside me, leaning against my knee, his tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with mine. That shared silence? It spoke volumes, a quiet affirmation that innocence wasn't lost, it was waiting, patient as fresh snow, for us to dig it out. But even as delight settled in, a shadow stirred in the corner of my mind, something deeper, unspoken, about the loneliness that holidays so often unearth. Finn's eyes met mine, twinkling with that knowing light, and I wondered, what whispers of solitude would his whimsy uncover next, when the play gave way to the quiet truths we'd both been avoiding. The first hints of dawn were creeping in like a shy guest, softening the edges of the night, but Finn and I weren't quite ready to let the magic fade. We'd collapsed into a heap on the rug, surrounded by the remnants of our elf adventure, ribbons trailing like colorful vines, snowflakes dangling like frozen laughter, and those family photos scattered like breadcrumbs leading back to who I used to be. My makeshift crown of vines and berries sat crooked on my head, a silly reminder of the play we'd just shared, and for a moment, everything felt right. Lighter, somehow, as if the burdens I'd carried all season had been shared, even if just with this pint-sized enigma. But as the quiet settled in, deeper than the snow outside, that shadow I'd glimpsed earlier started to stir. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no crashing waves or thunderous revelations, just a subtle chill, seeping in through the cracks we'd laughed over moments before. Finn must have felt it too. He lifted his head from where it rested against my knee, his green eyes scanning my face with that uncanny insight, like he could peer right through the smile I'd plastered on. No more antics now, the twirling and tumbling had given way to something gentler, more probing. He stood, stretching with a tiny yawn that made him look almost vulnerable, then padded over to the window, pressing his palms against the glass. The snow had eased into a lazy drift, blanketing the world in hush, and the streetlights cast long, lonely pools of gold on the untouched white. I watched him, the warmth from our baking and dancing still lingering in my limbs, but curiosity tugged me up. "What's got you so pensive, little buddy?" I murmured, joining him there, our breaths fogging the pain in tandem. That's when it hit, the weight of the midnight hour, that liminal space where the day's distractions fade and you're left staring at the raw edges of yourself. Holidays have a way of doing that, don't they? Amping up the cheer until the quiet moments sneak in and expose the hollow spots we paper over with festive wrapping. For me, it was always the nights like this, the house too still, the phone silent after the obligatory check-ins, the echo of laughter from memories that no longer matched my reality. I'd built walls around it all, thick, practical ones, forged from years of going it alone after the losses piled up. Dad's passing had been the first big crack, turning family gatherings into minefields of unspoken grief. Then the job that swallowed my weekends, the friends who drifted like autumn leaves, and the relationships that fizzled out before they could take root. I told myself it was fine, independence, right? Strength in solitude. But deep down, in the hush of these nights, the lie unraveled. Loneliness wasn't just absence, it was a presence, heavy and insistent, wrapping around your chest like a too-tight scarf. Finn turned from the window, his expression shifting from playful to something softer, almost sorrowful. He reached up, tugging gently at my sleeve, guiding me away from the glass and toward the couch. No words from him yet, he was a master of the unspoken, but his touch was deliberate, pulling me into the dimmer corner where the tree's glow barely reached. We sat, him curling up on the armrest like a watchful cat, me sinking into the cushions with a sigh that carried more than exhaustion. The room felt smaller now, the decorations we'd revived closing in like old friends who'd come to call out your secrets. He waited, patient as the falling snow, until finally, I broke the silence. "You know, Finn, all that fun we just had, it stirs things up, doesn't it? Makes you remember what you're missing." And just like that, as if my words had flipped a switch, he spoke. Not in a voice you'd expect from a storybook elf, no high-pitched squeak or jolly boom, but soft and steady, like wind through ancient pines, laced with a warmth that wrapped around you. "Missing, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "But not gone, friend. Never truly gone. It's the shadows that make us think so." I startled, nearly toppling the cushion. Speech? From him? It felt as natural as the rest, though, like he'd been holding back until I was ready to hear. His words hung in the air, simple yet piercing, and I found myself leaning in, the walls I'd built starting to feel flimsier under his gaze. We talked, or rather, he coaxed and I confessed, through that midnight stretch, the clock ticking softly like a heartbeat in the background. He started with the window, pointing out the empty street below. "See there? The snow covers everything equal like, no favorites. But under it, life waits. Roots tangled, hearts hidden. You've got your own blanket, haven't you? Thick and white, hiding the green beneath." I nodded, swallowing hard, the metaphor landing like a truth I'd skirted for too long. Holidays, for all their glow, often spotlight the isolation, the way the merriment outside contrasts with the quiet inside, turning solitude into a spotlight you can't escape. "Yeah," I admitted, voice rough around the edges. "It's been building, I guess. This time of year, it digs it up. The empty spots at the table, the calls that go to voicemail. I tell myself I'm okay, busy, you know? But it's like I'm here, but not really. Like I'm watching my own life from across the room." Finn tilted his head, his bells silent now, no jingling to break the gravity. "Walls," he murmured, tracing an invisible line in the air between us. "We build them high for protection, but they keep the light out too. And the warmth. Especially when the nights are long and the heart's heavier than the frost." He hopped down then, pacing a small circle on the rug, his tiny form casting a shadow that danced erratically in the low light. It was mesmerizing, the way he moved, deliberate, empathetic, like he'd walked this path with countless souls before me. "Tell me of yours," he urged gently. "The stones you've stacked. The ones from old hurts, new fears." I hesitated, fingers twisting the edge of the blanket draped over the couch, an old quilt from Grandma, threadbare but comforting. Vulnerability wasn't my strong suit. I'd mastered the art of the quick smile, the deflection, the "I'm good, thanks" that shut doors before they could swing open. But here, in this elf-lit vigil, the words tumbled out anyway. I spoke of the holidays after Dad died, the first one, where the tree stayed half-trimmed because no one could muster the energy, and we ate takeout in silence, pretending the laughter would come back. The years since, stringing lights alone while voices on TV promised the most wonderful time. The friends who'd faded, busy with their own families, leaving me to wonder if my solitude was a choice or a sentence. It's not that I don't want connection, I said, my voice cracking just a bit. It's scary, you know? Opening up means risking the loss all over again. So I stay behind the wall, safe, but alone. Even in a crowd, especially then. He listened without interrupting, his expression a mirror of quiet understanding, no judgment, just presence. When I trailed off, staring at the flickering lights, he climbed back up beside me, placing a small hand on my arm. It was cool at first, like fresh snow, but warmed quickly, spreading through me like sunlight breaking clouds. "Ah, but see," he said softly, "those walls? They're not unbreakable. Elves know a thing or two about hidden doors, passages in the roots, cracks in the ice. You felt it tonight, haven't you? The thaw, from play to this. From hiding to sharing." His voice wove through the room, pulling at threads I hadn't touched in ages, and suddenly, tears pricked my eyes, unbidden, real, the kind that cleanse rather than drown. The dilemma sharpened in that vulnerability, raw as an open wound. Holidays amplify our emotional walls, don't they? We plaster on the cheer, host the parties, send the merry texts, all to keep the loneliness at bay. But what if those walls aren't shields, but prisons? What if letting them crack, exposing the mess, the ache, is the only way to let the light back in? Finn seemed to sense the spiral, leaning closer. "Empathy starts here," he whispered, tapping his chest, then mine. Not in grand gestures, but in the quiet admissions. "Yours to mine, and back. You're not alone in the shadow, friend, I've danced in plenty. But together? The light pierces deeper." We sat like that for what felt like eternities and instants all at once, the conversation unfolding in layers. He shared fragments of his own world, not the North Pole myth, but a realm of wanderers like him, elves who slip into lives at crossroads, mending the unseen rips. "We don't fix with magic," he explained, his tone like a fireside tale. "We remind. That joy's in the connections we nurture, not the ones we mourn. Reach out, a word, a hand, and watch the ripples." His words catalyzed something inside me, a shift from guarded isolation to a tentative openness. The transformation was subtle, my shoulders eased, the knot in my chest loosened, replaced by a fragile empathy, not just for myself, but for the countless others navigating similar shadows. The sister who'd called earlier, her voice strained under the small talk, the neighbor whose light stayed dim year after year. We were all building walls, weren't we? But maybe, with a nudge like this, we could start dismantling them, brick by empathetic brick. As the clock edged past the witching hour, Finn's light, that inner glow he'd carried since arriving, seemed to brighten the corner, chasing the deepest shadows. I wiped my eyes, chuckling through the remnants of tears. "You know, for a tiny guy, you've got a way of cutting straight to the bone. Thanks for this. For seeing the dark spots and not running." He grinned, that impish spark returning, but softer now, laced with the depth we'd uncovered. The reflection settled in my mind like fresh fallen snow. Can a tiny elf's light really pierce the darkness we build around our hearts? Ourselves, each other, the walls we raise in the name of survival? It was piercing mine, anyway, turning solitude from a sentence into a starting point. But even as empathy bloomed, warm and unfamiliar, Finn's eyes darted toward the door, a new glint of purpose in them. The night wasn't over yet, dawn was just a tease, and outside, the world waited with its own hidden needs. "Rest a bit," he said, his voice regaining that playful lilt. "For tomorrow, the real work begins. Acts that ripple, kindnesses that chain the lights together." I nodded, intrigued despite the emotional whirlwind, wondering what secret gestures this elf had in store, and how they might unleash a generosity I'd long kept locked away. The first rays of morning light filtered through the curtains like hesitant fingers, painting the living room in soft grays and golds, but sleep? It was a fleeting thing that night, chased away by the whirlwind of emotions Finn had stirred up. I dozed fitfully on the couch, the quilt pulled up to my chin, while he curled up in a nest of throw pillows nearby, his tiny snores like the distant jingle of sleigh bells. Dreams flickered in and out, flashes of snow-draped streets, hands reaching across divides, and that persistent glow from his satchel, warm against the chill of old regrets. By the time I stirred fully, the clock read just past 8, and the world outside was already buzzing with the subdued hum of a holiday morning, distant carols from a neighbor's radio, the crunch of tires on fresh snow. Finn was up before me, of course, perched on the windowsill, peering out with that alert, fox-like curiosity. He turned as I groaned and stretched, his grin wide and expectant, like he'd been plotting our day since the stars faded. "Morning, friend," he said, his voice brighter now, laced with the energy of new beginnings. "Slept on the heavy stuff, eh? Good. Now, up with you, the day's not one for lingering in the warm spots." I rubbed my eyes, still raw from last night's confessions, and managed a sleepy laugh. "You don't quit, do you? What's this real work you teased about? More dancing? Or are we baking an army of cookies to fend off the winter blues?" He chuckled, hopping down with a flourish and rummaging through his satchel, pulling out a coiled length of golden thread that shimmered like captured sunlight. "Nah, better than dances or dough," he replied, dangling it before me like a lure. "This? It's the chain maker. One link for a kindness, another for the echo it sends. Holidays aren't just for receiving, they're for giving, the secret kind that sneaks up and surprises even the giver." His words hung there, simple but loaded, and I felt that familiar tug, the dilemma of selflessness. I'd spent so long preserving myself, hoarding energy for the daily grind, keeping my heart on lockdown to avoid the sting of more losses. Acts of kindness? They sounded noble, sure, but risky too. What if they drained me dry, left me exposed in a world that often took without giving back? Yet, looking at Finn, that thread glinting in his hand, I couldn't shake the pull. After the walls we'd cracked last night, maybe it was time to test the waters. We started small, easing into it over a makeshift breakfast of leftover cookies and steaming coffee, black for me, a thimble-sized mug of something herbal and sweet for him, brewed from those glowing berries. He sketched the plan on a napkin with a charcoal stub from his pack, secret gestures, nothing flashy. No big donations or public fanfare, just ripples, starting in my own corner of the world. "See here," he said, drawing a wobbly circle for my apartment building, lines branching out like veins. "Begin close. The neighbor with the dim lights? The one down the hall who shuffles past without a word? She's got her own shadows. Give her a spark, no credit, no strings." I nodded, the idea settling like a seed, but doubt nipped at the edges. Self-preservation had been my armor, peeling it back felt like stepping onto thin ice. Still, Finn's enthusiasm was contagious, and before I knew it, we were bundled up, me in coat and scarf, him tucked into my pocket like a mischievous stowaway, and out the door into the crisp bite of the morning air. The building was a quiet hive that time of year, doors closed against the cold, muffled voices drifting from behind them, the faint scent of cinnamon and pine wafting from vents. Our first stop was Mrs. Hargrove's door, 3 units down from mine. I'd seen her in passing, silver hair pinned back, eyes downcast, her holiday wreath a dusty relic from better days. Word around the laundry room was she'd lost her husband last spring, and the cheer felt like too much weight to carry alone. Finn whispered from my pocket as I knocked softly, something warm, something remembered. No names. Heart pounding a little, am I really doing this? I left a small bundle on her mat, a tin of those elf-spiced cookies, wrapped in plain paper with a note scribbled quick, for the quiet mornings. May it sweeten the day. Then we slipped away, my steps light but my mind churning. It was nothing grand, just a gesture born of last night's empathy, but handing over that tin felt like loosening a grip I'd held too tight. What if she tossed it? Or worse, what if it meant something, and I had to face the vulnerability of caring? Finn's approval was immediate, a pat on my chest from inside the pocket. "First link forged," he murmured, and we moved on, the thread in my mind already imagining it extending. Next was the lobby, where old Mr. Patel swept the vestibule every morning, his back bent from years of it, grumbling about the salt trucks but always with a nod for passers-by. He lived alone since his kids moved across the country, and holidays hit him hard. I'd overheard him once, sighing over faded photos of Diwali lights back home. Finn directed the play, brighten his corner. I paused at the corner store across the street, picking up a string of battery-powered lights, warm white, nothing fancy, and a thermos of hot chai, spiced just right from the clerk's recommendation. Back at the building, I strung the lights along the mail slots while he was out back dumping trash, then left the thermos with a sticky note, to chase the chill. Light up the lobby, and yourself. Sneaking back up the stairs, I felt the dilemma twist sharper. Selflessness pulled me out of my shell, sure, but preservation whispered warnings. What if these acts left me open to reciprocation I wasn't ready for? Or emptiness if they went unnoticed? Yet, as we climbed, a quiet thrill hummed in my veins, active now, not just observing the world's disconnected spin from the sidelines. The morning blurred into a chain of these secrets, Finn's thread uncoiling with each one. We ventured outside, boots crunching snow along the sidewalk where folks hurried by, heads down against the wind. There was the barista at the corner cafe, Lena, overworked single mom, her smile stretched thin as she juggled orders during the holiday rush. Finn's idea, ease her load. I slipped a 20 under a napkin with her name, scrawled, for a breather. You've got this season. No eye contact, just a quick drop and out, my face flushing as I ducked into the alley. Then the homeless guy on the bench by the park, bundled in layers that did little against the freeze, his sign weathered but hopeful, anything helps. We left a thermos of soup, warmed from my kitchen stash, and a pair of gloves I'd grabbed from the donate bin, anonymous in the flurry. Each act chipped at my reservations, transforming that passive ache of isolation into something participatory, alive. Connections sparked, unexpected and warm, Lena's puzzled grin as she found the cash, the way Mr. Patel's sweep slowed, eyes lighting on the glow, even Mrs. Hargrove's door creaking open later, a soft, thank you, murmured to the empty hall. But it wasn't all smooth, oh no, the dilemma reared up fierce in the lulls. After the park, we paused on a bench of our own, breath clouding the air, and I turned to Finn, who's poked his head out for a gasp of fresh oxygen. This feels good, yeah, I admitted, rubbing my hands for warmth, but it's scary too. All my life, I've doled out energy like rations, save it for the big stuff, protect the core. Now, I'm giving pieces away, and what if there's not enough left? What if the ripples come back as waves that knock me over? He nodded, serious for a beat, his freckles catching the sun like scattered stars. That's the rub, friend. Selflessness asks you to trust the chain, that what you give multiplies, doesn't diminish. But preservation? It's the old guard, whispering, mine, when the heart says, share. You've been hoarding light too long, time to see it spread. His words landed like a gentle prod, and I thought of the holiday's cruel irony, a season preaching generosity, yet so many of us clutching tight, fearing the empty hands. In this disconnected world, screens glowing but souls adrift, could one small gesture bridge the gaps? Ignite chains of goodness that warmed more than a single hearth? We pressed on, the axe growing bolder with Finn's nudges. Back in the building, inspired by the lobby lights, we knocked on a few more doors, delivering poinsettias to the young couple arguing in whispers last week, a book of poems to the elderly widow who fed stray cats. Each drop was a leap, me, heart hammering, slipping away before gratitude could entwine us, but feeling the shift inside, from guarded observer to quiet catalyst. The ripples showed up fast, unexpected connections blooming like frost flowers on glass. Mrs. Hargrove caught me in the hall later, eyes misty, pressing a knitted scarf into my hands. Whoever you are, it meant the world. Mr. Patel waved from the vestibule, his sweep now a dance with the lights, chatting with neighbors who'd paused to admire. Even Lena texted a mutual friend later, word got around, the barista's shift eased by that anonymous boost, her tip split with a coworker in need. It was transformative, this active weave into other stories, my miracles spilling over, turning passive holidays into a tapestry of shared sparks. By afternoon, snow flurrying again, we'd chained a dozen links, the golden thread in my mind stretching far beyond my block. Finn perched on my shoulder now, openly, as we trudged home, his laughter mingling with mine over the day's tallies. See? One gesture, and the goodness echoes, from your hand to theirs, to the next, lighting up the dark corners. Exhilaration buzzed through me, the self-preservation voice quieter, drowned by the proof of ripples. But as we neared the door, a nagging undercurrent stirred, external pressures lurking, doubts from the old life pressing in. Work emails pinged my phone, family expectations loomed, and I wondered how long this generosity could hold against the grind. Finn sensed it, squeezing my ear lightly. Trials ahead, friend, he whispered, eyes scanning the horizon. But hold the chain tight. When doubt tests it, that's when the real endurance shows. And with that hook sinking in, I pushed open the door, bracing for whatever storm the elf's light might weather next. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing out the swirling snow but not the undercurrent of unease that had started to coil in my gut. Finn slid down from my shoulder, landing with a soft thud on the entry rug, his bells giving a muted jingle, like a warning bell in the distance. The apartment welcomed us back with its familiar warmth, the tree standing proud in the corner, ribbons and snowflakes still dancing lazily in the draft, the faint scent of spiced cookies hanging in the air like a promise kept. But after the morning's chain of kindnesses, the secret drops, the unexpected smiles, the way those small acts had woven me into the fabric of lives I'd barely noticed, everything felt fragile. Like I'd built a snowman under a too bright sun, beautiful but bound to melt. I shrugged off my coat, hanging it by the door, and glanced at Finn, who was already scampering toward the kitchen, his energy undimmed. You mentioned trials, huh? I called after him, kicking off my boots with a weary sigh. Spill it, little guy. What's got you looking like you're prepping for battle? He paused at the threshold, turning with that knowing tilt of his head, his green eyes reflecting the afternoon light filtering through the frosted window. Not battle, friend, he said, his voice steady but laced with that pine-scented gravity. Just the way of things. Joy like this? It shines bright, but the world loves to test the flame. Winds come, cold ones, sharp. See if the light bends or breaks. He didn't elaborate, just hopped up onto the counter and started unpacking his satchel, pulling out that golden thread again, now coiled like a serpent ready to strike. I chuckled, trying to shake off the chill his words stirred, but it stuck. The day's high was still buzzing in my veins, the thrill of Mrs. Hargrove's scarf, the lobby lights making strangers pause and chat, Lena's text lighting up my phone like a beacon. For the first time in years, the holidays felt less like a solo endurance run and more like a relay, my handoff sparking something bigger. But as I poured myself a fresh mug of coffee, the doubts crept in, uninvited as weeds in a garden. Work emails had piled up during our outing, 3 from my boss, each one a gentle prod turning into a demand. Holiday deadlines don't pause for cheer. Update on the report? Family, 2, a voicemail from my sister, her tone clipped under the forced festivity. Hey, hosting's on you this year, right? Don't flake like last time. Mom's expecting it. Flake? The word stung, dredging up old guilts, the years I'd bailed on gatherings because showing up felt like performing without a script. I sank onto a stool at the counter, steam rising from the mug like unanswered questions. Finn watched me, fiddling with the thread, twisting it into loops that caught the light. It's starting already, isn't it? I muttered, more to myself than him. All that goodness we spread out there, it's like the universe is jealous. Throwing curveballs to see if I'll drop the ball. He nodded, hopping closer, his tiny feet pattering like rain on tin. The pressures mount. External, they call jobs that gobble time, kin that pull strings, the grind that grinds away the glow. You felt the shift, haven't you? From open-hearted giver to the old tug-of-war. I had. The apartment, once a sanctuary of rediscovered wonder, now hummed with the pull of real life. The phone buzzed again, another email, this one urgent, client crisis, overtime expected. My shoulders tensed, the crown of vines from last night's play suddenly feeling like a relic from another world. By evening, the storm he'd hinted at gathered force, not outside but in the quiet erosion of my resolve. We tried to keep the momentum going. Finn suggested an evening ritual, stringing more of that golden thread across the mantle, each knot a tie to the day's kindnesses. Anchor it here, he instructed, handing me a loop. Remind yourself, the ripples don't stop just 'cause the waves crash. I tied it, fingers fumbling a bit, but as I worked, the external barrage intensified. My sister called back, voice rising over the line, come on, you can't bail again. Everyone's counting on you, the tree, the turkey, the whole show. What's so hard about it? I paced the kitchen, phone hot against my ear, Finn perched silently on the fridge, his expression a mix of empathy and resolve. It's not bailing, I shot back, frustration leaking out. Life's just complicated. Work's piling on, and I don't want to half-ass it like last year. She sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken accusations, and hung up with a curt, fine, whatever. I slammed the phone down, heart racing, and slumped against the counter. The thread dangled loosely now, mocking me. See? I said to Finn, voice edged with bitterness. This is what I get for letting go. One day of playing elf, and bam, reality bites back. The job won't wait for miracles, family won't cut slack for some feel-good whimsy. What if all this, the cookies, the dances, the secrets, is just a bubble? Pops when the real world pokes it. He didn't flinch, just slid down to the counter's edge, his bells silent for once. Doubts the trial, friend, he replied softly, uncoiling a bit more thread. Fleeting magic, you call it? It feels that way when the winds howl. But faith? That's the forge. Do you cling to the spark, till your hands blister, or let it evolve, into embers that warm longer than any flash? The night wore on like that, the crisis unfolding in layers, testing the elf's influence like a flame against the gale. I tried to hold on to the joy, the way the lobby lights had sparked a neighbor's wave, the text from a friend saying Lena had paid it forward with free coffees for the rush hour crowd. But external pressures mounted, relentless. Work called, literally, a late-night conference from halfway across the country, my boss's voice tinny through the speaker, we need this wrapped by tomorrow, or the whole team's holidays shot. No excuses. I hunched over my laptop in the dim living room, the trees glow mocking my screen's harsh blue, Finn hovering nearby like a shadow consultant. My fingers flew across the keys, but my mind wandered, the newfound lightness cracking under the strain. The kindnesses we'd sown? They felt distant now, like seeds scattered too soon before the frost. And then the personal hit harder, a knock at the door, unexpected and sharp. It was my neighbor, Mr. Patel, thermos in hand, his face a mix of gratitude and concern. "The chai, the lights, that was you, wasn't it?" he said, eyes searching mine in the hallway's flicker. "Thank you, son." Brightened more than the lobby. Warmth flickered in my chest, a reminder of the chain, but before I could respond, my phone lit up again. "Sister, texting a rapid-fire barrage, if you're not hosting, fine, but don't expect an invite. Selfish as always." The words landed like punches, dredging up the isolation I'd confessed to Finn just nights ago. I closed the door on Mr. Patel with a mumbled apology, sinking to the floor, head in hands. "It's crumbling," I whispered to the empty hall, though Finn was there, slipping out from the shadows. "The miracle, the joy, it's fading. Pressures like this, they make you wonder if it was ever real. Just a fluke, a holiday hallucination to get through the dark." Finn sat beside me, small but steady, his hand on my knee like an anchor in the storm. "Wonder fades, he said, voice cutting through the doubt like a lantern in fog. That's the test, when the external howls, do you doubt the light or doubt the storm? Cling too tight, and it slips away, fight it, and it scars. But evolve? Let it teach. The magic wasn't in me, or the antics, it's in you, the shift you made. From walls to windows, hoarding to handing out. That's resilient, friend. Not fleeting, foundational." He began to weave the thread around my wrist, gentle loops that didn't bind but connected, linking back to the mantle, the tree, the morning's ripples. "Remember the chain? It doesn't break, 'cause one link strains. Pull on it, feel the others hold." I took a breath, ragged at first, but his words seeped in, coaxing the inner shift. We moved to the couch, the night pressing against the windows like an unyielding foe, and he guided me through it, not with grand spells or speeches, but quiet reflections. "Think on the pressures," he urged, as I vented about the boss's demands, the family's pull. "They're real, sure, bills that bite, ties that tangle. But wonder? It doesn't vanish, it adapts. Turn the work call into a kindness, finish strong, share credit with the team. The family rift? Reach out not from duty, but from the heart you cracked open." Doubt warred within me, fierce as a winter gale, faith in this magic felt foolish now, a child's dream clashing with adult anchors. Holidays promised endurance, but how many of us buckled under the weight, letting the joy flicker out like a candle in the wind? Cling to it desperately, or let it evolve into wisdom, the kind that weathers storms, not just sparkles in calm? As we talked, the crisis peaked around midnight, another wave crashing, an email from work, the report rejected, rework demanded by dawn. Panic flared, hot and immediate, and I paced, the thread on my wrist tugging like a lifeline. "It's too much," I groaned, running hands through my hair. "The elf thing, the giving, it opened me up, but now? I'm exposed, raw. What if the miracle's just smoke, and I'm left holding nothing?" Finn stood on the coffee table, eye level now, his gaze unflinching. "Then hold the smoke, till it clears," he said firmly. "But I tell you, it's not nothing. Look back, the tree we fixed? Still standing. The cookies? Echoes in smiles. The doubts? They're the forge, hammering resilience into the spark. Faith isn't blind, it's seeing the evolution, the way fleeting whimsy becomes lasting light." He led me then to the window, the snow a relentless veil outside, and we traced patterns again, not in play but in purpose, loops for doubts endured, knots for lessons learned. The shift deepened, profound and unyielding, from clinging to the elf's whimsy like a talisman, to embracing the wisdom it birthed. Resilience bloomed, quiet but strong. I drafted a reply to my sister, honest and open, no defensiveness. Tackled the report with fresh eyes, infusing it with the creativity our adventures had unlocked. The external threats loomed, sure, pressures that could drown the joy if I let them, but Finn's guidance affirmed it, the miracle endured, not as fragile magic, but as an inner fire, tested and tempered. When wonder fades under the grind, do we rage against the dying light, or nurture its evolution into something unbreakable, wisdom that carries us through the long nights? Dawn broke tentative, the snow easing to flurries, and as I finally shut the laptop, report sent, sister texting back a cautious olive branch, Finn's eyes met mine across the room, sparkling with quiet triumph. But even in the calm, a deeper purpose stirred in him, unspoken yet palpable, as if the trials had only cleared the path for the true gift waiting to unfold. What final revelation, I wondered, would this elf reveal next, when the endurance proved the magic was ours to keep forever? The first true light of dawn spilled across the room like liquid gold, chasing the last shadows from the corners and bathing the tree in a soft, forgiving glow. I leaned back against the couch, exhaustion tugging at my limbs but my mind was alive, buzzing with the remnants of the night's trials. The laptop sat closed on the coffee table, the report off my chest like a lifted yoke, and that text from my sister glowed on my phone screen. Sorry for snapping. Let's talk tomorrow, no pressure. Love you. It wasn't fireworks, not yet, but it was a bridge, tentative and real, built from the cracks we'd both been too stubborn to mend before. Finn perched on the armrest, his tiny form silhouetted against the window, watching the flurries dance their final twirls before melting into the morning. He looked different now, not weary but complete, as if the storms we'd weathered had polished him, revealing the depth beneath the mischief. You did it, friend, he said softly, his voice carrying that familiar rustle of pine needles, but warmer now, like embers settling after a blaze. Held through the gale. Not by clinging white-knuckled, but by letting the wind shape you. That's the evolution, fleeting sparks into steady fire. I met his gaze, those green eyes holding a universe of unspoken stories, and for the first time since his arrival, I didn't question it. No skepticism gnawing at the edges, no urge to pinch myself awake. The transformation was done, etched into me like frost patterns on glass, from the jaded guy staring at a lopsided tree, hollowed out by holiday hype, to this, someone who'd chased whimsy through the chaos and come out the other side with wisdom that stuck. But as the quiet wrapped around us, I sensed it wasn't over. Finn's satchel shifted on his shoulder, the glowing ornament from that first night peeking out, pulsing brighter than before. There's more, I said, half statement, half question. Your purpose here, it's not just the antics, the kindnesses, the doubts we wrestled. What's the true gift, Finn? The one you've been leading me toward all along. He smiled, that impish grin I'd first seen in the shadows, but it deepened now, revealing layers I'd only glimpsed. Hopping down, he scampered to the center of the rug, where the scattered remnants of our adventures lay, the golden thread looped around a photo frame, a stray ribbon curling like a question mark, the woven crown from our dance of rediscovery tilted against a cushion. The gift, he echoed, spreading his arms wide as if embracing the whole room. Ah, it's not in my satchel, or any magic trick. It's in you, friend, in the unfolding you've done. But come, let's tie it all together. Sit with me here, in the heart of it. I lowered myself to the floor, knees creaking a bit, mirroring his cross-legged pose amid the clutter. The air felt charged, expectant, like the pause before a symphony swells. Outside, the city stirred, cars humming faintly, a distant church bell tolling the hour, but in here, time bent, giving us this sacred pocket to unravel the rest. Finn began slowly, his voice weaving through the space like a storyteller around a hearth, pulling threads from our shared nights into a tapestry that made sense of the madness. Remember the arrival, he started, gesturing to the corner where he'd first emerged, that soft rustle still echoing in my memory. You, knee-deep in the ordinary grind, cynicism your shield against the superficial shine of the season. I didn't come to dazzle or deceive, no pixie dust fixes a soul adrift. I came to disrupt, to poke at the doubts. Is magic real in a world of checklists and hollow cheers? That first spark, questioning the wonder within, it wasn't about believing in elves. It was about believing in the possibility that joy hides in the chaos we dismiss as just life. We'd buried it under adult armor, bills, burdens, the fear that whimsy is for kids who don't know better. But look what happened when you leaned in, the tree straightened, not by spells, but by your hand steadying with mine. A subtle shift, from skeptic to seeker. I nodded, the memory flooding back warm and vivid, the way his tiny hammer had fixed the star, coaxing light from tangled strings, and how my own laughter had surprised me, cracking the ice. Yeah, I murmured, tracing a finger along the thread on my wrist. It started small. Felt ridiculous at first, like playing pretend in a world that doesn't pause for games. But it pulled me out of the rut, made me question if I'd overlooked the real elves all along, not mythical helpers, but those sparks we ignore in the rush. Exactly, Finn continued, his eyes lighting up as he leaned forward, bells tinkling softly with the motion. And from there, the whispers of forgotten joy, the dances, the ribbons, the snowflake canopy we spun from your past. Ah, that dilemma of lost innocence versus the weight we carry, it's the heart of so many holidays, isn't it? We chase perfection, trees trimmed just so, gifts that wow, but trade the raw play for rituals that echo empty. I guided you back, not to rewind time, but to reclaim it, spinning the dreidel, doodling on the frost, crowning you king of what you'd locked away. Those suppressed memories? They weren't ghosts to haunt, they were invitations to delight again, tentative at first, then full and freeing. Isolation melted because you let the child peek out, balancing burdens with the lightness they deserve. In the rush of life, where traditions turn to chains, we learn play isn't escape, it's the key to genuine connection, the kind that knits souls without a script. A lump rose in my throat, unbidden, as flashes played out, the laughter echoing off the walls, the ache of nostalgia twisting into warmth, the way my shoulders had loosened under that silly crown. It hurt, though, I admitted, voice thick. Seeing what I'd traded, those effortless joys for the grind. But you made it feel possible, like innocence isn't gone, just waiting for a nudge. Finn's nod was gentle, affirming, as he picked up a faded photo from the floor, the one of me as a kid, buried in wrapping paper, and held it between us. And the shadows that followed, the midnight confessions by the window. Facing that emotional isolation, oof, that's the raw one, isn't it? Holidays amplify it, the glow outside spotlighting the quiet inside, walls built high from losses and fears. You poured it out, the empty chairs, the faded ties, the independence that felt more like exile. My words? They were mirrors, reflecting back your vulnerabilities, catalyzing the empathy you'd walled off. Not to wallow, but to pierce the dark with light, yours and mine, shared in the hush. A tiny elf's glow against the heart's heavy frost, it shows us we're not alone in the building, the hiding. Connection blooms from admission, empathy from the crack we let in the door. I reached for the photo, fingers brushing his, and the contact grounded me, the cool warmth of his touch a reminder of that couch-side vigil, tears falling not in defeat but release. You saw it all, I said softly, the loneliness I pretended wasn't there. And talking it out, it didn't fix everything, but it shifted the weight. From solitary to seen, even if just by you. Made me think of all the others out there, building the same walls during the season. And that's the bridge to the ripples, Finn pressed on, his voice gaining momentum now, animated as he gestured to the mantle where the thread anchored. Acts of kindness unleashed, the secret drops, the chai and lights, the cookies left in the hush. Grappling with selflessness versus that fear self-preservation, holidays preach giving, but how often do we clutch tight, afraid the cup runs dry? I handed you the chainmaker, and you forged it, one gesture to Mrs. Hargrove, another to Mr. Patel, Lena's breather, the gloves in the snow. No fanfare, just ripples turning passive observation into active miracles. Those unexpected connections? They transformed you, from hoarder of light to spreader of it, proving one small deed ignites chains in a disconnected world. The world pulls us apart, screens, schedules, superficial nods, but generosity weaves us back, selfless because it fills the giver too. The thrill of that morning resurfaced, vivid as fresh tracks in snow, the flush of leaving the tin, the wave from the lobby, the text chains lighting up like stars. It scared me at first, I confessed, smiling ruefully, giving away pieces when I'd rationed so long. But the echoes, they came back warmer, reminding me miracles aren't one way. Selflessness isn't loss, it's multiplication. Finn's laughter tinkled, light but profound, as he rose to his feet, pacing a small circle amid our relics. And the trials that tested it all, the doubts, the pressures crashing like waves. External gales, work's unyielding grind, family's tangled strings, the fear that joy's just a bubble waiting to burst. Faith in fleeting magic? It wavered, sure, clinging felt desperate, fighting exhausting. But you evolved it, letting the wonder shift from whimsy to resilience. Through the rework and the olive branches, the thread held, affirming that when the spark dims under the storm, it's not end, it's forge. Wisdom tempers it, turning holiday highs into enduring light, the kind that weathers more than winter. I stood too, the pieces clicking into place like ornaments on a finely balanced tree, the arrival's question, joy's rediscovery, isolation's pierce, kindness's chain, doubt's trial, all converging here, in this dawnlit room. So the true gift, I whispered, realization dawning like the sun cresting the horizon, it's not you, Finn, or the antics. It's this, gratitude for the presence we've overlooked, the open-hearted encounters that craft miracles from the mundane. Whimsy links to lessons, on joy that's earned, not bought, connections that heal, not just decorate, generosity that endures, not exhausts. I've gone from skeptic, chasing superficial sparks, to believer, crafting my own spirit, the universal one that holidays hint at, but we make real. He beamed, the ornament in his hand flaring bright, illuminating his face in a halo of gold. You've got it, friend. Miracles aren't found in workshops or wishes, they're crafted, right here, through hearts brave enough to encounter the unexpected. Gratitude for the now, presence in the mess, that's the holiday essence, personal and profound. You've transformed, full circle, from ordinary ache to this glowing core, tying your growth to every soul out there seeking the same. The room seemed to hum with it, the tree light steady, the thread taut and shining, our adventures no longer fragments but a whole. Tears welled again, but joyful this time, as Finn placed the ornament in my palm, warm, pulsing, a keepsake of the unfolding. And now? I asked, voice hushed with awe. His eyes twinkled one last time, mischief mingling with farewell, as he glanced toward the window where the world waited, renewed. Now, carry it forward. But the light doesn't dim at dawn, it's just beginning to spread. As the morning unfolded around us, soft and unhurried, Finn and I lingered there on the rug, the ornament still warm in my palm like a heartbeat echoing my own. The room, once a jumble of half-hearted holiday trappings, now felt like a living testament, a space we'd reclaimed, not with grand gestures or enchanted fixes, but with the messy, human work of opening up. The tree's lights hummed steadily, casting flecks of gold across the walls, and outside, the snow had given way to a crisp blue sky, the kind that promises renewal even as winter digs in its heels. But in that hush, with Finn's gaze steady on mine, I felt the weight of what was coming, not an end, exactly, but a turning point. His purpose, that whimsical intrusion into my ordinary world, was wrapping up, leaving me to carry the flame forward alone, or not so alone, if I chose right. You see it now, don't you? Finn said, his voice a gentle rustle, like leaves stirring in a breeze you can't quite place. He rose slowly, brushing imaginary dust from his tunic, the bells on his shoes giving one final, soft chime. The miracle wasn't me showing up in the shadows, or the dances, or the secret chains we wove. It was you, all along. The skeptic who paused long enough to wonder, the isolated soul who cracked the door to let a little light in. But here's the rub, friend, this light? It doesn't stay lit by magic. It needs tending, like a fire in the dead of night. And tending means carrying it out there, into the world that's waiting to test it all over again. I nodded, the ornament pulsing in sync with the dawning realization, but a pang twisted in my chest, part reluctance, part exhilaration. Carry it how? I asked, voice barely above a whisper, as if saying it louder might scatter the moment like startled birds. I mean, yeah, the kindness is rippled, the doubts got wrestled down, but life's not a tidy story. The pressures come back, work grinding away, family pulling in a dozen directions, that quiet ache that sneaks up when you're least expecting it. How do I keep this wonder alive when the holidays fade and everything goes back to routine? He chuckled, that familiar tinkle laced with wisdom now, and hopped up to the coffee table, eye level with me once more. Routine? Ah, that's the trickster, isn't it? It dresses up as the enemy, lulling you into thinking the magic's seasonal, boxed up with the ornaments come January. But what if I told you the elves are still out there, waiting in the everyday, disguised as the overlooked glances, the small choices that could spark a chain? Not little green guys with satchels, mind you, but those whispers of possibility we brush off. The neighbor's sigh in the hallway, the coworker's offhand frustration, the stranger's hurried step on a crowded sidewalk during what you call just another day. Your job isn't done when I slip back into the shadows, it's just beginning. Seek them out, these unexpected visitors, and let them disrupt you, the way I did. His words hung there, provocative as a challenge tossed into still water, rippling out to stir up everything I'd settled into. I thought of my own life, the one I'd reclaim after this dawn, the desk job that swallowed mornings, the evenings alone with takeout and TV, the holidays bleeding into the blur of resolutions that never stuck. How many times had I scrolled past the signs, the weary barista pouring one too many shifts, the family members text laced with unspoken hurt, the quiet reflection in the mirror asking why the joy always felt one step away. Finn was right, the miracle wasn't in his arrival, it was in the invitation to look closer, to craft encounters that peeled back the superficial layers we all wear like winter coats. But carrying it forward? That meant action, deliberate and daring, shaking off the inertia that kept us all paddling in place. Start simple, Finn urged, as if reading the swirl of doubts in my head, his eyes twinkling with that irrepressible spark. Mindful giving, not the obligatory stuff, the gifts wrapped in expectation or the card sent to check a box. No, the kind we snuck out that morning, anonymous, heartfelt, aimed at the shadows you now know too well. Tomorrow, when the work emails flood in, pause before you fire back the reply. See the human on the other end, the boss buried under deadlines, the colleague juggling home and hustle, and slip in a kindness. A note of thanks that lingers, or an offer to share the load without fanfare. Watch the ripple, it might ease their load, but it'll light yours too, turning the grind from a solo slog into a shared path. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, the ornament forgotten in my lap as his words painted pictures I could almost touch. Imagine it, me, in the fluorescent hum of the office, not just nodding through meetings but reaching out, a coffee left on a desk for the new hire fumbling with protocols, or a quiet listen to a veteran story of holidays past, the ones tinged with loss like mine had been. Practical? Absolutely, and provocative in its simplicity. Why do we hoard our empathy, ration it out like it's a limited resource, when one small gesture could chain into connections that warm the whole winter? Finn's eyes held mine, urging deeper. And reflection, don't let it be a once-a-year thing, tucked into New Year's lists that gather dust. Make it daily, a ritual like our midnight talks. At day's end, sit with the quiet, what elf showed up today? That unexpected text from a friend, the laugh shared in line at the store, the moment you chose play over perfection? Jot it down, hold it close, let it thaw the cynicism that creeps back in the cold months. The idea settled in me like fresh snow, blanketing the fears with possibility. Reflection as rebellion, against the rush that drowns out wonder, against the isolation we normalize as just how it is. Picture evenings not scrolling mindlessly, but pausing with a journal or a walk, tracing the threads of the day. Did I cling to doubt when kindness called? Did I let the pressures dim the spark, or did I evolve it, like we did through the storm? It's provocative, isn't it? To ask yourself, in the mirror of routine, if you're building walls or bridges, if the magic you seek is out there in some mythical workshop, or right here, in the choices you make to encounter life open-hearted. Finn paced now, his tiny steps emphatic, bells whispering urgency. And the big one, friend, presence. Not the distracted kind, eyes on screens while the world passes by, but full, embodied being. In conversations, lean in like we did by the window, listen past the words to the ache beneath. With family, show up not as the host or the fixer, but as the one who's been cracked open, vulnerable and real. Gratitude blooms from there, for the now, the imperfect meal, the fumbling hug, the silence that speaks volumes.